Okay, good morning and welcome to the Employment and Recruitment Federation and LinkedIn's LinkedIn Live series. We've got a really exciting session for you today. My name is Siobhan Kinsella. I'm Managing Director of the Knoll Group and I serve at your pleasure as Vice President of the Employment and Recruitment Federation. One of the most wonderful things about our industry is that we elevate all boats, and the generosity of the leadership in this industry to ensure that all of our people across the industry can achieve their potential and can develop and have the skills to succeed. Our industry is thriving. It is a very collaborative industry. And with the leadership of the Employment and Recruitment Federation, we are able to invest in our people and ensure that we, as industry professionals, our clients and our candidates get the benefit of the learnings that we're able to impart. So today we have a really wonderful session. We've got Mark Valentine, who's an Enterprise Account Director with LinkedIn. Most of us will know he's with LinkedIn in this role about 7 years. But Mark comes from an agency background, which is really important to understanding our needs. We also have Tara Connon, who is a Senior Account Director in LinkedIn. Now, Tara also comes from an agency background and has done the work that you do and understands how to tailor the best of LinkedIn in terms of achieving the results that you want to achieve. So she's predominantly focused on the UK market and is now focusing on the Irish market, and we're delighted to have her here today. We also have, and I'm delighted to share with you, that Gareth Fleming, Managing Director of one of the most well-regarded and well-respected white-collar recruitment agencies, Brightwater Recruitment, is going to share his journey in terms of social selling and what they've done in terms of their utilization of LinkedIn and the journey that they've had in terms of social selling, the value of it. And most importantly, each of our three speakers today are going to show you how to do it, not just the value of it, but how to do it. And that generosity of experience and the desire to enable you and your success is hugely important. And that's something that I'm proud to be part of as part of the Employment and Recruitment Federation. So each of you who have taken time away from your desk to be part of this session, I can assure you it's well worth your time. It's going to be a really good session. And without further ado, I'm delighted to hand you over to Mark Valentine. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Siobhan. And it is great to be back presenting with all our colleagues in the ERF. So I am going to just set the scene a little bit about where we've come from over the last 10 years and how social selling has really become a big part in the sales process. And then I'm going to pass you over to Tara, who's going to really go through in a lot more detail the how. So the big thing is, since my time in recruitment back in 2007, things have really changed over that period of time. So the last 15-16 years, the proliferation of not only just the internet, but the amount of data that's being created and captured online, alongside with the increased use of social media to have more deeper digital relationships has really changed the game when it comes to how we interact with buyers, both when we think about candidates, but more so today how we interact with our customers as well, given the changing economic landscape that we're in. So we've said this a number of times, but it's getting even more important now since we've come out of COVID. COVID really accelerated the digitization of how people interact, particularly in work. More and more people are working in a hybrid capacity, so they are relying on their digital channels more to make decisions and to educate themselves. So what have you got nowadays? Well, you have buyers who are much more in control of the buying process. They have much more information at their disposal. Really, they're looking for people to advise as opposed to just show them products and services, right? The other side of it is we have a much more competitive landscape. So when I joined recruitment in 2007, there were a handful of recruitment companies did what I did. And now in the marketplace, there are a lot more companies, both indigenous, but also international players in the marketplace. So you have buyers more educated, being able to make more decisions themselves. You have more competition, and this just creates for a different type of landscape. And what we're seeing now is buyers are relying a lot more on the the advisory services. They're digging into credibility and trust of sellers, and relationship building. Although it always has been a big part of the buyer's journey and the seller's journey, relationship building is a little bit different now than what it would have been when I joined recruitment, because we're simply not out at events to the extent that we were before. We were not meeting in person as much as we were before. It's not saying that we don't do any of that stuff, but it's not as it's not happening as much as it once did. So where the whole social selling piece comes in is around using your digital networks and bringing them to life through value that you guys can ultimately deliver during the buyer's journey. Okay. So that's, I suppose, the why. Why is it important? Well, we're seeing a lot more people having success when they're incorporating digital social selling processes into their overall framework for sales. So much so that if you look at the top performing sales professionals globally, they have elements of social selling within their process. So that's a little bit about the why. It's not changing. If anything, it's going to become more pervasive over the next 5 to 10 years. So this is a really, really important topic, and it's really important for people to start building it into their process. So I'm going to introduce you now to Tara Connon. And Tara's going to go through not only her journey, but the journey of her customers as well in terms of the whole social selling narrative. Hi, Tara.
Hi, Mark. How are you? Let me
Very
just
good.
share my screen with you. So just triple checking, you can see that?
I can see that perfectly, yeah.
Okay, perfect. So I want to thank everybody for their time this morning. Obviously, here's a snapshot of the agenda and what I'll be walking you through. So I'm going to be looking at the traditional sales process. So I'm 4 years working with staffing agencies, as Siobhan alluded to. And this is 4 years of gleaning those conversations. When I ask customers, walk me through your business development process, these are the answers that I get. And I'm going to be peppering this entire presentation with a give to ask ratio, which I will talk about in more detail in a moment. I'm going to be taking what is your traditional sales process and doing a comparison of my marketing process, showing you guys how you can embed the two, and the two should be working in sync with one another, because the marketing process can help plug massive gaps in your sales process. I'm going to be talking about Gary Vaynerchuk quite a bit as well. He has an incredible pillar content strategy, which I'm going to show you how I rinse and repeat that strategy time and time again to aid my sales process. I'm going to be walking through exactly my how-to guide. What is social selling on your behalf? If you are going about on the journey of creating content, you're leaving digital footprints all over social media, all over various channels, and those digital footprints can socially sell on your behalf. So it's about showing up as a brand when people go to do their research online. And then the power of scale. I'm going to be comparing you to two salespeople, one doing a human output and one leveraging and scaling use of social selling and its many iterations, and looking at the outputs of two people side by side. I doubt this guy has featured very much on ERF presentations before, but I'll speak about him in a moment on the right-hand side. Over on the left, most recruiters are 360-degree recruiters, right? So they are held accountable or KPI to do their own business development, whether that's to bring in new leads and new clients or expand upon existing client base. But over on the left is, again, traditionally what I have heard is a business development process. There are nuances to this, but number one, identification of lead, that's the first step. And that's done through a couple of different avenues. Number one, see who's advertising. That's typically reactive business development. You're piggybacking on somebody who's advertising out there for a particular role. Checking out the news. Who's growing, opening new offices, new teams. That's often through their socials. Companies announce all those types of things. And then who's getting funding, because obviously funding is a catalyst for growth. Make contact. And again, there are nuances to this, but traditionally what I hear is agencies have 4 touch points to make contact. with consumers. Now, I'll tell you why we're missing 50% of the necessary outreach, according to research, if that is the traditional sales process, and then fill the job. Okay, ultimately, you might get the job on a contingent basis, so you've 1 in 4 chance of filling it, or you might get it on a retained basis. But that's ultimately the outcome that you want. Now, the guy over on the right-hand side is a guy called Alex Hormozi. Everything I have learned, or everything I read, everything I consume about sales is from this guy. He's the founder of acquisition.com, and I've just finished reading his second book, $100 Million Leads. I love his definition of a lead. A lead is someone who you have means to contact. So again, typically that's done in a cold outreach or a one-to-one capacity. He's not dismissive of this, by the way. In his book, he talks about scaling even cold outreach. But there's a stark difference between an engaged lead versus just a lead. An engaged lead is actually somebody who's interested in buying your stuff. And it's typically inbound. It's a warmer outreach and it's one-to-many. So that's something that is scaled. Here's that same sales process in the funnel form. So obviously at the top of the funnel, you've customers that are strangers to you, they've never heard of you before, and you need to go about making them aware of you. So over on the left or the right-hand side, I have your typical marketing touch points there. I've just added in events. Not that they're that frequent these days, maybe once a quarter, maybe twice a year, but again, that is another marketing touch point. What's the challenge with this funnel? I have a couple of issues with this personally, okay? You're asking people who have just been aware of you for their business time and time again. So I mentioned in my agenda, the give to ask ratio. Alex Hormozi and both Gary Vaynerchuk talk about how brands show up for their customers and give and give and give and give before they even ask you for anything. In this sales process, you are constantly just asking for business all the time. You're not giving your customers anything. And I think that's a huge proportion of the sales process that is missing. I thought it would be more, but I did a lot of research in preparation for this event. And a lot of the research out there is suggesting that it takes 8 marketing touch points for a new message to land and resonate with the customer. 8. Traditional sales process is giving us 4. So we're missing 50% of the necessary outreach that it takes to land a message with somebody who's never heard of you before. Okay, again, how can you help scale that process to achieve that 8 without absorbing a lot of your time? In this scenario as well, you're not engaging with your customers. So again, where's that give to ask ratio? And how are we all adding value to our customers, potentially ones that we don't work with or ones that we already do work with? What I also don't like about this funnel is it's suggestive that as soon as a customer converts, the job is done. I don't like that. Because again, I don't know if many customers measure the cost it takes to acquire a new customer and the cost per lead. So your CPL and your CPA. More often than not, with this type of model, it's an expensive process end to end. And then what also they don't measure is the customer lifetime value metric, your CVL. So if I go about doing all of this and my hit rate is maybe 10, 15% of a conversion, I get a customer in, I fill a role, and the average placement fee is 5K. Now I don't have any infrastructure in place to constantly engage with that customer, to constantly add value. I have no reason to pick up the phone to that customer and have a conversation with them. So what I ask my customers is, what are you talking to your customers about when you're not filling a job? And more often than not, they don't have a tangible answer for me. And I think then what happens is the customer can go cold because you're not filling a job for them. And then all of a sudden, next quarter, you have to rinse and repeat that entire process again because they've gone cold on you and you're no longer engaged with them. I should say I'm in the thick of this myself. Okay, as Siobhan alluded to, I've just joined the Irish team. I've been for the past 4 years working with agencies in the UK. So again, no Irish recruitment agency has heard of me before. So I'm in the process or in the thick of making my Irish customers aware of me, who I just inherited there in July and August. So again, my marketing touch points aren't unlike anything that a traditional sales process would do. I've just included video in mine there at the very top because that's something that I leverage all the time. This is where I triple down. So instead of skipping the engagement part of the process, this is where I spend most of my time. Going back to that give-ask ratio, I want to give so much to my customers that they feel when I come to ask, they're absolutely fine with it. And it's a warmer outreach. It's a nicer conversation. How do I make them engaged with me? I record videos for my customers every week. Typically, that's evergreen content. Evergreen content means it's always going to be relevant. It's something that is an asset to me now, because whether I work at staffing agencies in Ireland or the UK, it's always going to be relevant to them. I can repurpose it time and time again. Webinars on a monthly basis. I share content on social media, mainly LinkedIn, on a weekly basis. I'm going to be talking about LinkedIn's algorithm at the moment, in a moment. I have one-to-one sessions with our customers and their teams, whether that's in the office here or online. And then I record a lot of those sessions, again, for the purpose of, that can be used as evergreen content, that can be used for training and onboarding purposes, time and time again. So at the bottom, I've just noted that humans will always have a limited output, but leverage is unlimited. And it should be something that we talk about every single day as part of what we do. Social selling and its many iterations make just for so many more opportunities. And how many more marketing touch points can we achieve if we leverage social selling? So again, going from that 4 to that 8 without actually absorbing a lot more of our time. Gary Vaynerchuk has a 50-slide deck on how he goes to market. I've just decided to take the first slide, but again, you can Google it after the webinar if you're really interested. It's a fabulous breakdown of exactly what he does. But he talks about pillar content. Pillar content being your long form content, which can be a webinar, it can be a salary survey, it can be a podcast episode. The challenge with that is pillar pieces of content typically sit and have the responsibility for the marketing person to distribute. It's solely the focus of the marketing person, and sales and marketing aren't talking to one another. And the sales teams aren't contacting the marketing teams to say, what long form pillar content pieces do we have? Can we slice them and dice them up 50 to 100 different ways and distribute them across multiple channels to create micro moments from that long form content? This is exactly how I do it. I hosted a webinar this day last week with my colleague Rory Moore, all about optimizing LinkedIn for branding and engagement. We had 475 customers register, and then 330 odd attend on the day. So that's my pillar piece of content. That was a webinar that was 50 minutes long. Now, I know the irony, we're all on a webinar here today, but I do understand that webinars aren't always feasible to attend during the day, or if a client call comes in, you have to log out of that webinar. If that webinar is 15 minutes long and I have 10 key takeaways from that webinar, 10 key messages that I want my customers to walk away with, I'll record 10 shorter videos for all of my customers, alluding to the key takeaways that I talked about on the webinar. Now, the metrics from those videos, for full transparency, on average, they get 100 views per video at a watch rate of 80%. And they are sent to my customers on a weekly basis. The odd time I share these videos across social as well, so they get way more views, but I typically have historically kept them for my customers week on week. Now, the total number of customers engaged is 100 on a weekly basis. For context, when you upload a video to Meta or YouTube, the metrics of success that you're actually given are 0 to 3 seconds and 3 to 10. So again, if I can retain 100 of my customers' attention at an 80% watch rate, I know the stuff that I'm sending them is being consumed and it's adding value and it's something that is of interest to them. I post on social. So again, when myself and Rory were talking about doing this webinar, I said to him that I've recorded shorter form videos and I'm actually going to post it on LinkedIn to see if their appetite for a longer webinar. Now, I know LinkedIn's algorithm, of course, that's something that I'd recommend everybody do if they're going on a journey of leveraging social and posting across different channels. I know comments are king. I know if my desired outcome is to get more awareness and more engagement on my content, to ask for people to get involved in a conversation, tag others that feel they may benefit from this. And again, what was the outcomes of that? So 2,200 impressions, 43 comments, and 30 plus staffing agencies tagged in the comments, all encouraging each other to attend the webinar. Now, going back to my engaged leads, traditional marketing years and years ago, like TV advertising, radio advertising, billboard advertising, they were all outbound messages. You couldn't contact your radio station and say, how many people watched it? How many people clicked through? You didn't have those metrics. You have those metrics now. If you're going on a journey of leveraging social video webinars, you have all the metrics at your fingertips to understand who are my engaged leads, who would be a warmer outreach, who is more engaged with me than if I went cold to market. So what do I use? I use the metrics from everything that I do. My webinars, those who have registered, those who ask for the recording, then those who watch the recordings. My video views. How many times did they watch it? Did they share it externally? What point did they watch it 2 or 3 times? My socials, again, impressions, reposts, shares, comments, and so on and so forth. Recordings. I mentioned I record videos and I record a lot of sessions with my teams. Those recordings, I'm still getting notified 2-3 years later that they're being opened from my customers in the UK. So those are technically acting on my behalf for hopefully a couple of reps of mine in the UK. And then my proposals, everything gets sent out where I have visibility of the analytics behind it as well. That's how I identify my engaged leads. And again, from a sales process point of view, if you are spending time doing outreach, don't you want to be laser focused with your outreach and understand, well, who are my engaged leads? Because they're obviously going to get my priority and my focus. I do get asked from staffing agencies, what's an example of our types of pillar content? Staffing agencies have so many assets that they're probably not using to the best of the assets capability. So over on the left-hand side here are some examples that I've heard customers have that they're not leveraging. So salary survey, podcast episode, employee benefit surveys, market mapping events, online and offline, interviews, Q&As, migration trends, tweets, diversity statistics, and so on and so forth. So again, are your marketing teams or marketing agency, if you do outsource that, talking to your sales teams, taking that pillar piece of content and slicing it up into 50 to 100 micro moments for your customers, more leverage, same content, distributed across multiple channels. I'll tell you why that's also important. According to Sales Psychology, and Alex Hormozi cites it as well, if we receive the same message in multiple different formats, our ability to retain and recall the message increases tenfold. Why is that important? I'll give you an example. I had a customer, maybe she's on this webinar, I'm not sure. I hope she doesn't mind me telling this story. She came in here a few weeks ago and told me, I had a session with my team, and actually the session was based around your content. And I said, what are we talking about? And she said, I was talking about how LinkedIn's algorithm, and when you post jobs as content, actually hinders your brand's visibility. She's received that message from me in a couple of different formats. A, I had a session with her and her team when they did come into the office. B, she has seen videos from me to that nature. C, we had a webinar on it last week. The recording of the webinar was watched by her. And then I also posted a carousel on LinkedIn alluding to this fact that if you post jobs as content, you might be hindering your brand's visibility. She's able to retain and recall that message and give it and deliver it confidently to her team. I wonder, and I don't have the data to support it, but I wonder if I only gave it to her once in an email, would she A, even remember it, or B, able to recall it and have a session on it with her team? So I think that's really, really important. You want to be memorable. You want to be cutting through the noise, because again, it's only going to get noisier. I have some notes down at the bottom here. And I think for context, understand the platform you're posting your content on. Like, for example, a salary survey. If I wanted to post that on LinkedIn, do my consumers or target audience consume a 20-page document on LinkedIn? It's very unlikely. Okay, when I think about myself, the 2 places that I consume long form content are A, when I'm out for my walk, or B, when I'm driving my car. They're the only 2 places. I don't watch podcasts or read white paper documents on a platform like LinkedIn. So would it be far more beneficial to take that salary survey out, slice it up 50 different ways, create videos on it, carousels, polls, infographics, memes, whatever it is that you guys want to do, and then post them onto various social channels, and then have a link to the longer form content if the customer wants to genuinely read the full document end to end. I did mention it already, but I think it's really important to say, understand the algorithms of social platforms if you are going on this journey of social selling. I listened to a podcast called Social in 6, and it literally on a bi-weekly basis tells you the six biggest changes across social in the last 2 weeks. That's how frequently algorithms and social platforms bring in new features and so on and so forth. So that's how I keep up to date with social media platforms and their algorithms. So again, why that's important is if my customer's desired outcome from posting content is more awareness and more engagement. You need to understand what's going to help you achieve those two outcomes by understanding the platform's algorithm. And then preferred means of consumption. So I'm kind of 4 years doing this. This has been through a process of iteration for myself. So I started off with a newsletter, and I started off with a blog, and this, that, and the other. And I've tested out various platforms on my husband at home, asking him how many clicks did it take to open that video, and so on and so forth. This is what worked for me. Just my customers prefer to consume videos from me. They don't like long-winded emails, and I don't blame them. I don't like long-winded emails either. So again, I need to deliver content in their preferred means of consumption. Content that adds value. I think this is a term that is thrown around so much, and it's given so much lip service, like add value to your customers. What is value? What is valuable to my customers? 2 sources that have really helped me define value and then become the foundation for every content that I look to create are on the left-hand side, a book called They Ask, You Answer by Marcus Sheridan, Revolutionary Approach to Inbound Sales. The premise for that book is understanding what your customers are asking, create content at scale on that and answering those questions, and show up as a brand that's adding value way before your customer buys. That's going back to that give-ask ratio. Consumers, Mark alluded to it when he was introducing this session, the power is in the consumer's hands. They can buy from any brand they want to. They can book any hotel they want to. They can partner with any staffing agency they want to. How are you showing up as an agency when they go about doing their research online, whether that's through search engines or social channels? Are you showing up as a brand that is perceived to be consultative, advisory, adding value above and beyond them even, asking for your business or to partner with you? Over on the right, Alex Hormozi again. I loved his definition of value. It's what are your customers' desired outcomes times the perceived likelihood of achievement. So again, I'm 4 years working with staffing agencies. When I ask them, what's your desired outcome from your LinkedIn solution? What's your desired outcome from posting content? What's your desired outcome from doing X, Y, Z? And again, what I do is I go back, I create content on that, and I show customers that A, it's going to help them achieve their desired outcomes, and B, it's going to, again, increase the likelihood that they will achieve those. What is social selling on your behalf? I mentioned if you do go on this journey of social selling and leveraging digital, it's going to be really, really important, because there is a prolific rise of SMO, which is social media optimization. Everyone on this webinar is probably familiar with SEO, social engine optimization. But to my first point there, our research and purchasing behaviors online are moving from search engines to social media platforms. I'll give you the simplest example. I bought a new house recently, and I'm on the market for furniture and all things interiors. I've started to search for that online, furniture companies, Ireland, interior designers, and so on and so forth. Instagram knows, based on my search history the day before, what I'm potentially in the market for. And I'm starting to engage with interiors and furniture accounts on that platform. So what's it doing? Its algorithm is understanding what I searched the day before and accounts I am now engaging with. And what does it do? It repurposes more and more of that content to me. So now all of a sudden my research started on SEO, search engine optimization, Google, and now it's moved to Instagram completely. And I'm finding all new furniture brands in Ireland and interior designers and so on and so forth. It gives real-time insight into brands. It lets us lift the hood and look under the hood of brands, which is our expectation, by the way. So websites can be static shop windows of your brand. You might have a blog there and you might update that on a weekly basis, but in general, your websites do tend to be static shop windows. And again, as online consumers, think about yourselves. If you landed on the social channel of any brand that's out there, you have an expectation that that brand gives you a real-time insight into what they're doing 24/7. That is our expectation. And if our expectation is not met, immediately we feel, is there credibility in this brand? Do we trust this brand? Are we happy to part with our credit card details for this brand? I'll give you an example of that again in layman's terms. If we on this webinar got the same message from 2 brands, one brand, you decided to check them out and they had 20 followers and they posted content 9 months ago. The other brand, 20,000 followers, and they posted yesterday. When I ask my customers, who are you more likely to respond to? Same message, by the way, from each company. The answer is always company B. When I ask them why, we go through the motions of, well, you know, there's various answers to that. But when I ask why and why again, the crux of it is trust. The word trust is associated with showing up as a brand that posts content on a regular basis and that looks to build out a follower community, because there's credibility and trust associated with that follower community as well. Social channels give a much richer, more in-depth experience. So again, simplest analogy that I use is years ago when I wanted to go to a new restaurant in Dublin, I would use the search engine, Google, to look for new restaurants in Dublin. And the experience that I got from a restaurant's website is probably their opening hours, their menu, and a map where they're located. Now, what do I get on social? Okay, on Instagram, I follow a lot of restaurants. I follow a lot of food influencers. All those people get invited to new restaurants as they open in Dublin. So now, again, Instagram's algorithm understands this is content Tara likes to consume, and she's engaged with a lot of these types of accounts. Show her more. So now new restaurants in Dublin are shown to me through sponsored content of stories, and that's how I check them out. Now, what experience do I get? I get their grid of all their photos. I get their reels. I get their highlights. So that could be their recipes, their interviews with their chefs, Q&As, and so on and so forth. I get UGC, user-generated content. So everybody who dined there within a 24-hour period is sharing their stories of what it was like to dine there, acting as a feedback loop or reviews, which is really, really important when it comes to us making our decision. My decision to book that restaurant is now to the point nearly made for me before I've even thought about it, due to the experience that I get on their social channel rather than their website. Finally, to this point, again, it helps build trust digitally. So again, to my example about getting the same message from 2 different brands, immediately that brand with the 20,000 followers that posted content yesterday, I associate that brand with trust, and my decision to probably prioritize that brand over another brand is made for me without even speaking to any of your team. I want to make sure that everything I'm talking about today from a marketing point of view translates back to sales. So over the years, I've just kind of tangibly put the outcomes on a page to say, what outcomes am I actually achieving from this process? So number one, there's loads of decision makers involved in a process now these days, even more so than ever, okay? And what happened years ago, when I asked for a warm introduction, I might say, hi, Siobhan, walk me through the process for signing off a new vendor. What does that process look like? And Siobhan tells me that Mark's the CMO and Gareth is the CEO or COO. And I asked for that introduction, which is outbound. And it can take weeks, right? Because the guys are busy. They might not prioritize having a conversation with me. They've never heard of me before. So again, I'm a stranger to that person. So what has traditionally been an outbound exercise for me years ago has now turned inbound through a couple of reasons. So number one, CEOs or COOs will start to get my content and start to get my videos. They now say, hi, Tara, I want you to introduce you to Siobhan, who's our CMO. Can you also subscribe to her content? I'll also ask customers, if you feel this content is adding value to you, please, please, please send me your team's email addresses and I'll ensure they get subscribed on a weekly basis. And again, I'm aware that I have competitors also trying to get my customers' attention. I want to make sure that I'm across everybody's desk every week, whether that's, you know, a recruiter using the tool or a CEO. Also, again, agencies I have found are happy to introduce me externally to the marketing agency, which I partner with as well. So now multiple decision makers come inbound to me. I've decreased the time it takes to book meetings, and that goes back to the marketing touch point. You know, if it takes 8 marketing touch points, I'm able to achieve those 8 touch points faster through this process and book meetings far quicker. Identification of champions, and again, my engaged leads. So if ever I want to position a pilot to a customer, and I'm thinking who internally is watching all my content, attending my webinars, reviewing the recordings, because they're probably good champions to talk to internally about being an advocate for this pilot program. Increase in customer sentiment, I do have a slide on that. Again, going back to that feedback loop, don't consume just because you've filled the role that the customer is finished. Have a feedback loop in there, look for the recommendation, look for, you know, their sentiment through a survey and so on and so forth. Identification of white space. Now that's an internal kind of I suppose, LinkedIn sales thing. Obviously, we want to identify accounts that maybe there's opportunity for more product to be sold within it. And I have the capability to do that as well. For you guys as recruiters, maybe it's identification of a hiring manager who you're not working with, and you know that business is expanding. Could you ask for that warm referral in, because again, your existing hiring manager is so engaged with you that they're happy to refer you in. How I kind of sum up those 5 key outcomes that I'm achieving is this process helps me get more engaged leads per unit of time. Here's a snapshot of the customer sentiment. So I want to go back to that thought process of adding value to our customers. Again, what are they asking? Am I showing up answering those questions? Am I helping them achieve their desired outcomes? And again, have I increased the likelihood of that achievement? I've 30 odd recommendations on my LinkedIn profile. So I decided to go through just a couple of them and underline specifically what the recommendation said. And again, some of them have alluded to the video, some of them have alluded to the fact that I was able to maximize the usage of their product. I gave tips, advice for recruiters, which was super helpful. Enhance their use of LinkedIn. These are all terms that we use. So I know I'm adding value by virtue of I'm helping them achieve these things. 2 salespeople. Salesperson A over on the left-hand side, okay? They are reliant on human outreach. So again, your marketing touch points like calls, emails, connection requests, and emails. When salesperson A is offline, so is their ability to outreach. Okay, salesperson A might work 8 hours a day. That's their ability to do outreach. And when they're offline, so is their outreach. So in this scenario of salesperson A, their inputs equal their outputs. They're pretty linear. Salesperson B. So again, I'm using my metrics as an example. I have all the human elements. I can do calls, meetings, emails, connection requests, and so on and so forth. But again, look at also what I'm able to do. I'm able to send weekly videos to my customers that get watched 100 times at an 80% watch rate. I'm able to host a webinar that's registered by 475, attended by 330. I'm able to post on social once a week, which gets between 2,000 and 3,000 impressions. And if I was a company, obviously I'd be looking at the metrics of my followers and so on and so forth. Now, when I'm offline, guess what's not? My videos, my recordings, my content. So I still, as I pointed out a few slides ago, I still get the notification from a customer in the UK looking at my content 2 to 3 years ago. So it's evergreen. It has saved me time. That content is hopefully being an engaged, or I suppose hopefully driving engaged leads for my reps in the UK. So that, I think, from an input plus leverage point of view, you're able to increase your output exponentially. I wanted to sum it up, and I was trying to find a way to sum it up, and I think Gary Vaynerchuk did a way better job than I could ever articulate. I found this on my feed there the other day. Great sales is just poor marketing. No sales engine that's insane has ever beat a solid brand in the end. And social media is being consumed at scale. Learn to make content, and tons of it. Now, again, I just want to flag with you that we are doing a survey. So I want you to take 20 seconds, if you will, to just scan this QR code and fill out the survey for us. Myself and Mark tested it. It just takes a couple of seconds, but we are looking for your feedback. Did the session add value? Because we want to do more sessions like this for you going forward. So if you wouldn't mind just scanning that and completing the survey while we have you here online today. But thank you so much.
Brilliant, Tara. Thanks a million for that. And it'd be a good time while we're waiting for the guys to take a look at that survey. We'll also bring it back up on the screen at the very end, Tara. Again, trying to take your sentiment in real time is always better than sending a follow-up survey 2 days after the event. I'd like to reintroduce Siobhan and Gareth. Please do come and join the panel. I thought that was really interesting. I've made a list of some questions I'd like to ask the panel, but I've got even more now for Tara as well. Yeah, it's interesting. Like, there's a couple of things that I'm thinking about here. I'm trying to remember back when I was recruiting and how what you've described in terms of your sales and marketing process and how that might how that might come true and bear fruit for me as a recruiter. So that's something that we're going to talk about in a moment, guys, and I'll be digging into Tara on that, and also Gareth. Gareth, I would love to kind of take a step back, because at LinkedIn, you know, we'd like to say we're doing this for a while now, and we've been talking about it for quite a number of years. But from your perspective, and also the perspective of your company, Brightwater, you know, what was the catalyst for change that led to social selling becoming a part of the process and not just an afterthought?
Thanks, Mark. Good question. And listen, I'll start by saying thanks to Tara. That was really, really interesting. I've taken a lot of notes myself. It's great to see a real professional marketeer talk about this topic. It's one I'm really passionate about. The pandemic was the catalyst for Brightwater, Mark. Brightwater, as you know, as you alluded to at the start, it's a really well-known brand, a good white-collar company. 25 years old, a huge amount of people in the company there a long time that have been building out that brand for a long time through pretty traditional marketing routes. My remit and joining the company back at the height of the pandemic, so late 2020, was to come in to grow IT and grow that brand really quickly. The CEO, Barbara, had a vision of what was coming down the tracks because of the digital transformation that was happening during the pandemic. Wanted to capitalize on that. I think we all know as recruiters, we hear digital transformation, we see pandemic, everyone scrambling online. We know there's opportunity there. So that was the premise. And coming in to do that for me in lockdown, again, when there's a lot of digital transformation going on, that pandemic acted as a catalyst for social sales and social engagement. So some organizations were sophisticated enough at it, others not so much. But for me, it was something I really understood and the opportunity that it presented.
Okay, excellent. And tell me this, Siobhan, we haven't talked a huge amount about kind of the Knoll Group, or even if the wider Facilitas Group, but has there been anything that's been happening internally within your business that has led to more of a focus on helping your recruiters think really strategically about their brand and how they show up for those customers between those moments where they may not be filling a job for them? You're on mute there, Siobhan. I think we still have you on mute. I cannot hear you there. I haven't got you there, Siobhan. I'm not sure if everybody else has. Tara, can we switch to yourself? What I'd be really curious to understand, Tara, in your world, particularly in your customers' world, what are some of the things that you've seen your customers doing quite well from a social selling perspective, you know, the practicalities of it?
I would use a customer called Add Some Zest as an example, because I want to give a really tangible example. So Callum Lyle I've worked with Callum for a good few years now. He was with Robertson and Sumner, and then he went out on his own literally a year ago. So at the moment, he is a 3-man agency and he's looking to hire another 2. You will rarely see Callum post jobs as content. You only see Callum talking about things like customer engagement, NPS scores, so net promoter scores, and how he goes about achieving that. And some of the outcomes that he's achieved, he's actually recorded videos and content on it, is 18, it's either 17 or 18 of his last customers were all referrals. Now, think of that from a cost per lead and cost per acquisition point of view. If 18 out of 21 customers came to you via referral, your business development costs are looking pretty low, allowing him to operate really lean. He also understands LinkedIn's algorithms well. We've had many conversations about this. He knows how to get more engagement and awareness from his content. So I would use Add Some Zest and Callum Lyle as my example and some of the outcomes that he's achieved. And he's just on the beginning of this journey. He's only a year in business. It's a startup. He recruits for SaaS professionals in London.
Excellent. Yeah, I've just actually shared the LinkedIn company page to Add Some Zest to get some ideas, guys, in terms of what kind of content might kind of sit well with you guys. Sorry, Siobhan, we have you back there.
Yeah, thank you very much to Richard for giving me some advice on how to get back into the audio. Much appreciated, Richard Eason. We've, in the Knoll Group, taken a conscious effort to try and add value through our company page, and we've gone over the last couple of years from 3,000 followers to 30,000 followers. So what's kind of important is that you're not just there. As Tara said, I was really interested to hear what Tara was saying about not just posting jobs. So the fun side of recruitment, the engagement side of recruitment, the different skills landscapes, and I suppose what I try to do is to be generous in the content that I'm sharing, not just for our customers, but for competitors, for different agencies, because your branding at a company level is not just about customers or recruiters, it's about whether recruiters want to join you, the caliber of people you have in your organization, what they value, what they see your values are. And one of ours is very much lifelong learning and skills. So, you know, this is the year of skills for the European Union, and it's something that we focus on very much for our people and investing in our people. And one of the things I love about this session and Gareth's generosity and Tara's and your own, Mark, and the Employment and Recruitment Federation is lifelong learning. It's constantly investing in our people, and the rate of skill change and the skills that we're going to have to acquire is changing so quickly that what would have been considered, why would you give that information to a competitor? Why would you give that information to a customer? That's actually the value you're creating. That's differentiating you from your competitors who are operating on a more transactional level. So no, I'd absolutely concur with and took notes myself from Tara's presentation. I completely agree with Gareth as well.
No, excellent. Now, I'm imagining I'm 6 months in recruitment, right? Oh, we have a little poll coming up here, guys. Please do fill it out. We want to get a flavor for, I suppose, people's propensity to social sell or not, okay? So please do fill that out. And we will follow up with some of those results after the session. But yeah, I'm imagining I'm 6 months in role. I'm learning a lot about sourcing, interviewing, business development. I probably don't feel personally that I have a huge personal brand. What are some of the practical things I can do? And Gareth, I'm really going to lean on you here initially, right? So naturally, if you're recruiting in a professional context or a context where like the member base is on LinkedIn, you'll probably spend some time on LinkedIn, right? But Gareth, what are some of the practical things, if I was in your team, you'd be saying, right, Mark, this is how you need to set yourself up to social sell effectively?
It's probably easier to answer that by telling you what we did and
Okay.
to give you some of the results that we got.
Brilliant.
So we really simply, we had a team of 3 back in late 2020 in tech, and we began to post content daily on LinkedIn and came at it from 2 different angles, broad and niche. So broad content was anything broadly topical going on in tech, new jobs, layoffs, what were people doing to counteract lockdowns, what did people think about remote working, but then niche, which was really more original, authentic content. So content that we got from phone calls with candidates within software, AI, data security, and clients within those areas as well, what was happening in their worlds. And typically, for me, that's always the best source of content. So really trying to talk to 2 different audiences, but always overarching in IT. And for me, in setting up yourself to do this, and it ties back into what Tara had said, it's all about the consistency. So that content has to be consistently there every day on LinkedIn. That was our KPI. Every day we needed to post in one of those 2 areas. And one of the objections I've seen to this is people just are afraid to put themselves out there, afraid of the feedback they'll get, afraid to get out of the comfort zone. It doesn't matter. It is just about getting that content up there consistently first, and then making sure that the quality of it is really consistent as well. And we began to see pretty quick results. we gauged it really on impressions initially. So our impressions went from in the hundreds to north of 10,000 within a month. Some of the posts from some of the team managed to garner over 100,000 views pretty quickly. And then we began to notice our inbound leads really increase again during a pretty tricky market, if you'll remember.
Yeah.
But the other really practical thing we did, and it was probably the biggest thing that we did, going back to Siobhan's point around how you differentiate yourself from your competitors, we began to engage with business leaders and organizational leaders in the tech space. So hiring managers, typically at C-level within current or target clients, and then senior individuals and organizations that were really heavily plugged into the tech ecosystem, like Scale Ireland, the IDA, Enterprise Ireland, Dogpatch, and then different VC funds. And we invited them not to talk about jobs, but to talk about themselves, their platform, their company, 20, 30-minute interviews over Teams that we chopped up into mini clips that we could share for weeks on end, as well as the full interview on YouTube. That really, really gave us a lot of credibility in the market. And I always talk about the 4 C's in social selling. It's content, consistency, congruency, and community. And that's when we really hit that congruency piece, because now over 12 months, our client base began to see regular, consistent, quality content, both on LinkedIn, Instagram, etc., as well as video. So we really began to plug into the tech community then. And that's when we began to really see big, big results. So they were the 2 main things that we did.
Gareth, do you know what I love? I love the fact that it's social selling is a vehicle, but there's actually a strategy behind it. And what I'm hearing from you here is sometimes in service-orientated marketing, it can be a bit more complicated than product-orientated marketing, like what myself and Tara do. We know our customers like to use our product, but sometimes they feel they could be better at using it. So we build a whole product marketing ecosystem around education and insight, right? Whereas in the service area, it can be a bit more challenging. And I would really encourage, if you're recruiting in a particular area of expertise, think of all those different plugins to that market. Who are the institutions? Who are the other service providers? Who are your customers? Who are your suppliers? And how do you bring them all together? Just the way you've described it. I think that's an unbelievably powerful way of doing it. And again, from a practicality standpoint, if I share a piece of content out now and I link Gareth in or Siobhan or the ERF that has 90% of the recruitment company membership in Ireland, that absolutely scales out my brand. So I would encourage everybody on the webinar to think more broadly about what is the industry you're servicing and how can you build and bring it all together. Siobhan, have you got anything to add in terms of more practicalities? I know you talked about skills being a big part of kind of the culture within Knoll and pushing that as your kind of pillar piece of content, but is there any practical things that you've seen your teams doing individually or collectively to drive social selling?
Recruiters occasionally think that they have to be serious all of the time. So I love the engagement when they're having a great day in the office or they're at an event and they're showing the fun side to what we do, because we generally, recruiters, enjoy our jobs. We work hard, but also, you know, there is an awful lot of positives of our industry and the things that we get to do and the people that we interact with. So having the confidence to actually post those pictures. I mean, when I started, the amount of people in our organization that didn't have a profile picture. So, you know, we organize professional headshots if that's what they want. You know, it's important that you enable people and give them the confidence. The posting on LinkedIn is not something that you're going to get a tap on the shoulder for, that, you know, why did you post that? To have the confidence to be your authentic self, post, and particularly, you know, resilience is something that we talk about an awful lot in this business, but there's also an awful lot of fun to be had. And I do think I love authentic content, just generated for no other reason that somebody wants to share what's happening in their day. I do have a really good question in from Emma Ward, and it's quite simply this, it's for yourself and Tara. Do hashtags matter anymore? Are they still relevant when posting?
Tara, I'll let you jump in on that if you want.
I would say yes, absolutely. But the thing about hashtags is everyone typically uses branded hashtags, right? So if I open Taracon Recruitment today and I used Taracon Recruitment as a hashtag, guess what? Nobody subscribes to that. I'm not Beyonce, unfortunately, yet. I'm aiming for that, right? So what I find is staffing agents can use branded hashtags. Okay, so steer away from that because no one will subscribe and follow that. Some mistakes sometimes that I also see is they'll use like, so I used to work in construction recruitment. Okay, so construction jobs, big hashtag followed by a lot of people on LinkedIn. If you ever want to understand how large a hashtag is and what its subscriber base is, simply plug that into the search bar on linkedin.com. You can literally plug in hashtag construction jobs and you'll see it's probably followed by, I think it's just short of 100,000 people. Now that is kind of like driving home in rush hour traffic. Will your content stand out amongst a newsfeed of 100,000 other pieces of content that people are subscribing to? Probably not. So with your hashtags, I go super niche. To Garrett's point about, you know, posting broad content and then that really niche stuff. Is there a hashtag out there that's followed by a couple of hundred people that's super niche, but the likelihood of your visibility or content being found stands out way more. So hashtags are still relevant. Steer away from branded ones, go for the niche ones. And again, the objective of a hashtag is to increase your content's discoverability. 100% they're relevant.
Brilliant. Thank you, Tara. Mark, can I ask Gareth a question?
Yes, fire away.
Gareth, how did you deal with the confidence issue in terms of getting your people on point in terms of the objective in posting and giving them the confidence to say, okay, this is relevant in a broad context or this is relevant in a niche context? How did you approach that and what was the brief?
So a lot of the niche content we publish we work in verticals within Brightwater and in particular within technology. So a lot of the niche content came from conversations the recruiters were having with their candidates and their clients on a daily basis. We were encouraged everyone then to post based on anything interesting that came up. Don't worry about it being something macro that you think everything is going to love. Again, to Tara's point, if it's going to hit a niche audience of 200 or 300 people and you work in that niche, even better. That's we got past that bit. I think you mentioned confidence there, Siobhan, did you? The confidence piece is one of the biggest objections that we see. And I think to move past that, you have to show people the wins that you can take from social selling. One of the biggest wins we had in tech was we can tie about $500,000 in revenue to our first year of social selling, generated by inbound leads. And when the rest of the company began to see that, well, then they knew that it worked. Trying to encourage people as well to get past that. We've never done this, or we're afraid to put ourselves out there. Again, having a bit of fun, Siobhan, is a really, really good way to do it. Have a bit of fun, put a post up, see what works. If it doesn't work, that's fine. Try something different. But eventually you will find something that begins to generate more impressions. So rather than try and roll out across a whole company, wrong thing to do. We've done it in smaller groups, and those smaller groups have begun to see the fruits of their labor now.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Excellent. Tara, just it'd be remiss of me not to mention LinkedIn in this today. I mean, from the perspective of how companies can put their best foot forward on LinkedIn at an individual and particularly a company level, because I am conscious that it's great for individuals to build up their professional brand, but ultimately you want to roll it up to the company brand so that, you know, the company is benefiting from all the activity as well. So Tara, like, what are some of the things that you've seen companies doing to put that best foot forward?
So do you remember in my presentation, I talked about how restaurants show up on social and the rich experience that we get from that? Some companies out there aim to achieve that rich, in-depth experience on their social channels. So what does that look like? I'm thinking of Meet, MEET, life sciences agency based in the UK. So when I land on their page, we at LinkedIn can build these additional landing pages that are called careers pages. Okay. Now, any marketer will tell you out there, there's no point in building a landing page unless you have some kind of form of traffic going to it. So they come with targeted ad campaigns as well. Now, how that aids conversion is when I land on that page can flip according to my information on my profile. So if I view that page and they have those additional landing pages, and let's say I'm in healthcare, all of a sudden their healthcare page will show up with their content and healthcare jobs that they have. So that really aids conversion. I think Meet are a great example of that. So we do have that capability to help customers build out a much richer viewer dynamic experience on their social pages on LinkedIn. So I think that's pretty important. Also, for anyone who was on our webinar last week, my colleague Rory Moore alluded to it through a tool he uses called SEMrush. When customers or candidates land on most recruitment agencies' website, everyone is monitoring the traffic inbound to the website, but no one's monitoring the traffic off the website. Where do they go? A huge proportion of staffing agencies' traffic that ends up on a website, they check out on they usually have LinkedIn widgets and they head off to their LinkedIn channels. So either that might suggest that they haven't got enough information on their website for the customer to find out everything about them. Or again, customers' expectations, they want that real-time under the hood, what's going on with that company 24/7. So I'll just go to their socials because that's where I expect to find it. Or again, they want to understand what projects are they working on, what clients do they work with, and so on and so forth. Again,
Right.
enabling them to automate the process of making a decision. Should I partner with that agency, or should I trust my next career move with that agency?
I suppose that goes back to your point of, the people with 20 followers and no content posted. There's a lack of trust there, but also, let's be honest, people aren't spending a huge amount of time looking for the information they want anymore. If they don't find it, they bounce. And again, even looking at the Brightwater page, I know Hayes do it quite well. And you mentioned Meet. There are a number of different areas that you guys can go online on LinkedIn to have a look at, get some inspiration for what your user experience could look like on your linkedin.com company page. I'm just really conscious of time, guys. I would love to continue this conversation. I'm not sure if we can get through very many more questions here, Siobhan.
You have another poll to share, Mark, which
we have one more poll to share. Yes, can we push that out there, Anna? Brilliant. And I think this actually, the questions are coming up here. I might let the guys answer it, but Gareth and Siobhan and even Tara, can you think about this now for the next 10 seconds while this poll is being reacted to? How is your organization measuring social selling? Because like what you said, Gareth, people really stood up and looked when you were able to say 500,000 was booked via social selling, right? But we don't want to wait for sales to be booked. We want to actually measure some of these inputs along the way, right? So Gareth, I'll ask you now, what is the main thing that you guys are measuring? And it might be outside of some of these listed here on this poll.
So I think for vanity, it's impressions. But I think in reality, we're looking at things like customer retention, satisfaction. Would they be an advocate for us with their, for referrals? Recognition in the community was a huge one for us. We knew that once we nailed that piece and began to be invited to different events as a recruiter in the tech community, that was a big signal for us.
Yeah.
Followers, I mean, we've added 100,000 extra followers in the last 20 months on our LinkedIn page, which is a huge amount. So they'd be the main things, but obviously the customer piece for us would be the biggest piece. Okay.
And that's interesting. So what I'm getting at that is there's almost like a qualitative piece that you're looking at in terms of the invites that you're receiving from your customers, but also then looking at more quantitative things like your follower base. Okay. And we can see the poll here. 37% would be looking at followers, 44% looking at applications and leads, and then 19% don't measure. I'm actually pretty surprised with those numbers. It's pretty good to see people are measuring this stuff. Siobhan, is there anything in particular that your company, you alluded to follower growth there, is there anything else you look at?
No, I have to be honest with you. I learned quite a bit from Gareth, and I think across the recruitment community that we haven't been disciplined enough and qualitative enough in our assessment of the impact of social selling. So, we do it, we know it's good, but we're not measuring it effectively. Like so many things, for an industry that's kind of focused on good quality KPIs or good quality inputs and good quality outputs, I really don't think that the majority of us as recruiters or recruitment leaders are measuring this in as disciplined a fashion as we should. So I've taken a lesson from Gareth in that now, definitely.
Okay, brilliant. Tara, is there anything that you'd add to the measurement piece?
Like Gareth, it's very much quantitative and qualitative as two separate buckets. I kind of alluded to it in my presentation where, again, I revert back to my sales process. How has it helped me from a sales process point of view? Again, getting access to decision makers more, turning that from an outbound exercise to now an inbound, getting more people engaged with my content, more watches, more click-throughs, more all of that stuff, more retention, reducing churn. Obviously, again, we want to protect the customers that we already work with. So again, churn mitigation, that has been a huge part of my strategy for churn mitigation and making sure customers get the most out of their investment from a LinkedIn capacity. And then ability to book meetings much quicker and things like that. So I do measure all that. And then the sentiment piece is I do survey my customers every quarter to make sure I'm constantly adding value. I allow them to put some skin in the game then, and I say, what do you want me to focus on next quarter? Yeah. So I'm hopefully generating some ideas from them, and again, recommendations on my LinkedIn profile, things like that.
Excellent. Listen, guys, that's fantastic. We're 7 minutes over. I hope everyone enjoyed that session. I know I did. I've got a bit of work to do, to be honest, to improve my social selling. But listen, thank you for everyone who's joined, and we'll see you next quarter for our next edition, which will probably be November.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Bye.